I want to give a shout out to Penny and in particular to the young girls who are part of that team. I imagine it's incredibly nervy when you do those sort of things and especially recording. I can't quite see Cam. I know they're doing a quick little check, things like that. And Matt, I can see him kind of walking wet in the back there. But I wanted to say this to Cam, but I wanted to say, oh, there he is. It's great to see you, mate. And I just wanted to say to you, but I also want to say to everybody else, a few weeks ago, we were talking and we were saying this principle is one of the things that's important for us as a church, that we welcome the mess of lives. Now, Cam, you might think of your life as being pretty rugged and pretty messy, but everybody's life is messy in its own way. And I think for us all to recognise that it doesn't matter whether you think you're the most perfect kind of person in the world, life is still a mess. Life is still difficult. And so I wanted to say to Cam and I wanted to say to others that it's an important part of us that we welcome the mess of every life. And so I want to say to you today, wherever you're coming from, that you need to recognise that's part of being in a church. It's not part of being perfect. It's actually part of welcoming the mess of life. Now, this is the mess of the service because I forgot that my friend Ken here, who I asked personally, was going to do a reading. So I've actually jumped up before him.
Thank you, Andrew. Well done.
Thank you, my friend. I'll let you read now.
For everybody. Matthew 28, 1-9. Early on Sunday morning, as the new day was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went out to visit the tomb. Suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, rolled aside the stone and sat on it. His face shone like lightning, his clothing was as white as snow. The guards shook with fear when they saw him. They fell into a dead faint. Then the angel spoke to the women. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I know you were looking for Jesus who was crucified. He isn't here. He has risen from the dead, just as he said would happen. Come see where his body was lying. Now go quickly and tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead, and he is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there. Remember what I have told you." The women ran quickly from the tomb. They were very frightened, but also filled with great joy, and they rushed to give the disciples the angel's message. And as they went, Jesus met them and greeted them, and they ran to him, grasped his feet, and worshipped him.
Thanks very much, Ken. I want to welcome you as well from wherever you've come from. If you're a new person, a visitor today, it's great to have you. If you're part of Cam's kind of friendship group, it's great to have you here as well. My name's Andrew, and I'm one of the team here. And actually this morning, I'm kind of quite jealous because Matt and I were having a laugh before because I quite like the idea of taking off my shoes and getting in the pool as well. It's a warm day for Easter, isn't it? Did you notice that today? My wife was going, she said to me this morning, she said, "You're not wearing that long shirt, are you?" And I said, well, I've got to look somewhat respectable, as distinct from Matt, who can get away with the shorts. I was actually very tempted just to kick off my shoes up here on the stage, but I thought that might make you jealous. I want to introduce you to an important part of my life, a significant part of my life on this significant Easter Sunday, and here it is up on the screen. This is my glorious, stylish car. As you can see there, it's a magnificent car. You can't actually see it that well at all. We're actually waiting for some blinds to be installed over here to help you see a bit better on the screen. That's my glorious car. It's a 2003 navy blue Commodore wagon. I mean, who wouldn't want a car like that? It's a glorious car, a beautiful car. Let me tell you something. For those of you who don't know me, I have two teenage daughters, and my two teenage daughters, they are deeply hoping. Their fingers are crossed that they can learn to, in fact, one of them has actually just started, they can learn to drive in that car. They are desperate. They are desperate for their friends to see them in that car. And maybe they almost don't hesitate to ask this. Maybe if they could inherit it as a first car. Not. In fact, the last words I ever heard from them was, Dad, this came from my youngest. I'm going to give a shout out to her this morning. Dad, can you please get a new car? It's so embarrassing. The old blue wagon, she ain't what she used to be. There are a few dings. There are a couple of spots of rust bubbling up. The carpet's kind of threadbare, like its owner. The roof lining is drooping, like its owner. And I ask you this question: what do you see, or what can you imagine you see when you look at my old glorious car? What can you see? But you've got eyes of vision. It's old. It's a bit run down. One of them called it a bogan car the other day. Maybe it needs to be retired. Just 2 days ago on Easter Friday, we were asking that question, what do you see? Robin painted some pictures. This one wasn't released on a Friday, but she was actually painting this during the service on Friday. The sense that God is doing something even when we cannot see it with our eyes. And we asked ourselves, what can you see? The followers of Jesus, I doubt that they could see very much on Friday. Their eyes were blinded by the power of the Romans, the impending death of Jesus, by their fear. And after the death of Jesus executed on a Roman cross, we read these words. It says, Jesus' friends, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, they had followed him not just for 5 minutes, followed him for an extended period of time. They stood at a distance watching. What did they see? What did they see? Fear of Rome, the death of hope, maybe the sense of the failure of everything that they had been living for. And I'm sure that at a minimum they were filled with doubt and probably more like despair. I mean, Jesus in fact had spoken about his impending death and promised this resurrection. And so from another one of the Gospels in Matthew 16, it says, Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that he had to go to Jerusalem, that he would suffer many terrible things, that he would be killed, and on the third day he would be raised from the dead. They had heard those words, but they could not see it. They could not see it. What do you see? What can you see? On the Sunday after the Friday, when his closest followers were nowhere to be found, Ken read those words before about how on that new day, Mary went out to the tomb. And it's a wonderful expression. I want to say that if you're a woman here today, sometimes the church gets a bit of a rap that it kind of has this kind of patriarchal type thing which sort of elevates men and rejects women. Let me say that's actually a million miles away from the life of Jesus. And here in this almost like a testimony of record, it's women who are the most faithful. It's women who are the one who testify because they begin to see. His face shone like lightning. His clothing was white as snow. Don't be afraid, this angel says to them. I know what does it say in your head? You don't have to say it out loud. I know what you are looking for. What you're looking for. What can you see? What can you see? You see that Easter Sunday is a new day dawning. It's more than just a calendar flicking over from Saturday to Sunday or from April the 3rd to April the 4th. It's the dawn of a new era. I know what you're looking for. You're looking for something new. You're looking for hope. It's the new thing that God is in fact doing. The new chapter of God making all things new. You know, I could spend time today wanting to prove the resurrection of Jesus. And if that's a real issue for you, I'm happy to chat to you about a whole bunch of things which surround that. But today, on this Easter Sunday, I want to talk to you particularly about not the resurrection of Jesus and how to prove it, but rather the new life that resurrection brings in. On Friday, I shared this promise from the Old Testament, part of what was predicted hundreds of years before the time of Jesus. And it says these words, it says that, that's God talking in a sense through his prophet, for I am about to do something new. See, I have already begun. Do you not see it? I will make a pathway through the wilderness. I will create rivers in the dry wasteland. A pathway in the wilderness. Rivers in the dry wasteland. This is a promise of hope. A promise of hope for all humanity. It's a promise of hope for every single person, no matter the mess of life that you might feel like you come with. This is the hope of Easter. That the loving, sacrificial death of Jesus on the Friday creates this new hope and new life on the Sunday. This is the resurrection promise for the best of life for every single person who can see that God is doing something new. And I want to say to each person today that's here or online or wherever you're with us, that the resurrection of Jesus is an invitation to participate in a new life. It's a way out of the desert of guilt and brokenness and shame to a new restored life. Can you see this? Can you see this for yourself? Can you see it? You know, one of the sad elements of 2020 in this church community was we missed our community car show. Our men's shed usually runs this fantastic car show in kind of like the October framework, but because of the whole COVID detail, we couldn't run it. And as you can see by my stylish personal chariot, maybe I'm not a complete sold-out car, petrol head, but I do appreciate those who are able to have a vision for what cars can look like. I mean, have a look at some of these pics here on the screen. Here we've got some classic old vehicles, and when you look at them, maybe you see one of two options. You see something that's rusted out. You see something that's really should be retired. Something that maybe the best way of dealing with it is to stick it on a trailer, take it down to the tip or the metal recycling department and watch it get crushed. But somehow some people can see beyond the rusted out shells. They can see beyond the brokenness and have a vision for what they, not what they are, but what that they can become. It's the same thing what God does with people. Because God redeems life, He sees what people can become and takes the rusted out, broken down hull and shell and make it into something new. I'm about to do something new. Pathways through wilderness, rivers in dry wastelands. And I love that in the car restorer's mind, the way forward is not to just destroy the vehicle, not just to pack it on the tow truck and watch it get crushed. No, somehow, with loving patience, they begin the restoration process. You see, I don't know how many people here know people who do car restoration type things, but they will chase for hours and hours and days to find the exact right part. No use getting some kind of, like knockoff type thing, some imitation. No, I want to find the original. I don't want to replace those 1950s vinyl seats with some new modern type of seat. I want to find the original vinyl seat because their aim is to restore it with love and with patience and with time and skill to the way it is meant to be. That's the heart, that's the vision that they have, to restore it to the way it's meant to be. And the resurrection of Jesus is about restoring lives to the way they are meant to be. It's not about taking a life and throwing it away. No, it's about taking that individual and making them the way they should be. Paul, the Apostle Paul, who knew what it was like to have a horrible life, who knew what it was like to have his life revolutionized and changed, puts it this way. He says that anyone who belongs to Jesus, to Christ, has become a new person. Now, that's not throwing out the old person. The old has become new, he says, because that new life has begun within them. That new life is within them. It's not actually changing them to be person A into person B. No, it's taking person A, the broken mess of person A, and making them to be the person they should be. In the same way that restorer takes the car and brings it the way it should be brand new. That's what God does in the life of an individual. You don't take a 1964 Corvette Stingray, which kind of a lot of us of my era really like, and turn it into a 2020 Stingray. No, that would be horrible. You restore it to the way that it should be. You think about other things that get broken in life. You think about a broken relationship that you have. Maybe a relationship that's been damaged by trust or deception or something like that which has destroyed it, some pain and hurt. You try to restore that relationship to the way in which it should be. You don't throw it away. It doesn't start from ground zero. It has a history. It learns and grows from its experience and grows into the ideal form of a relationship as it should be. See, that's what God does with relationships and with people. He doesn't make us a completely new person. He restores us to the way that we should be. Listen to what Paul says. He knew personally what a new life was because he was an angry man. He was a hurtful man, inflicted much pain and suffering. But he has an encounter with Jesus that changes his life and begins this new resurrection work in him. In Romans, he writes these words. He says that we died and were buried with Christ by baptism. As Jesus or Christ was raised from the dead by the glorious power of the Father, that's the same way of resurrection that we're testifying to today. Now we also may live new lives. We've been united with him in his death. We'll be raised to life as he was. We know that our old sinful selves were crucified with Christ so that sin might lose its power and we become no longer a slave. For when we died with Christ, we were set free from the power of sin. You see, when a person lives and is united with Jesus in that resurrection life, they become a new person within themselves that bubbles up. The old, the hateful stuff. As Cam testified, he testified to things like pride being replaced by humility. Think about what that means. Hate being replaced by love. That's what Paul testifies in this. The old has gone, the new has come. This culminates in the whole entire new person being associated and connected with Jesus in that resurrection life. No longer living for self, no longer filled with pride, no longer filled with hate, but following Jesus. Doesn't imply that there's some perfect, immediate snap of the fingers and this new life happens. No, in the same way that a car restorer takes time to work through each different part, so God does take time to walk through all the different parts of our lives. We're not finished articles. It becomes a journey of restoration. So I ask you today this very simple question. Can you see that? Can you see that God can bring that transformation in your life as well? Can you see that? Maybe for some of us here today, there's a sense that we need to become a new person ourselves. We need to have a sense of new hope. Where does that begin? I want to say very simply, it begins with this acceptance of this message that Jesus is the one that Cam testified, who came to earth as the Son of God, who lived and then died and then rose again. But somehow it's a very hard message to wrap our head around. The God of the universe who is a God of love, gives up his life for each one of us so that we might know that love and live in that new life. To believe is just simply to take one step at a time. You know, we read about how the closest followers of Jesus struggled. You know, the women and the men who had been part of his kind of immediate community, they had struggled in the midst of that pain of the first Easter. The women had stood at a distance. The men had deserted. And I want to say to you that if you want to take these steps to follow Jesus, you shouldn't expect to have some kind of almost like perfect, rock-solid faith to be right at the start. The reality is that for each one of us to follow Jesus takes one step at a time. We're not a finished product, one step at a time. You see, in those steps, the resurrection of Jesus gives a hope to each one of us who need that second chance in life. The disciples who abandoned Jesus, they needed a second chance. The women who were filled with doubt, they needed a second chance. Let me tell you, I needed a second chance. And I know you need a second chance as well. The resurrection of Jesus guarantees that for each one of us. It guarantees that we can live in that new life, that we can participate in the new work that God is doing. For I am about to do something new. See, I have already begun. Do you not see it? Do you not see it? I will make a pathway through the wilderness. I will create rivers in the dry wasteland. And so I want to say to you on this Resurrection Sunday, that these words from a prophet hundreds of years before the time of Jesus are fulfilled in the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus. He's creating, he's doing something new. He's offering hope to those who are broken. Offering hope to those whose lives feel like a desert or a wasteland. And so I invite you very simply today to hold on to that truth. I invite you to see it, to see Jesus. Please let me pray for us. For our God, we thank you that you truly are a God of love. We see that on Friday when the cross equals love. But we also thank you that you are a God of power and a God of hope and new life. And we see that on Sunday as we know that Jesus was raised to life again. Now, God, my prayer is for each one of us that we would be able to see that new life, to be able to see who you are and what you have done for each one of us. In the name of Jesus, we pray.